Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Tech Cafe podcast, streaming live from Egypt and Italy. I'm 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗏, and I'll be your host for today. Will talk to us today about Scrum for hardware. Glad to have you with us today, Paolo. Paolo Sammicheli is an Italian entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience, international speaker, registered Scrum trainer and coach, and author of the books Scrum for Hardware, the world's first significant publication on the subject, Scrum for Hardware Explained, which has recently been published, and Scrum in Artificial Intelligence. Agile Development with Scrum and MLOps, which includes a foreword by Jeff Sutherland, co-author of Scrum and the Agile Manifesto. Before we start, please allow me to introduce Tech Cafe. Tech Cafe is a startup company dedicated to empowering the tech community and enabling creativity and innovation in the tech industry. Along with this podcast, we offer software professional services, including technical workshops and technical consulting in many areas, such as TDD, BDD, extreme programming, domain-driven design, and many more engineering practices and technical consulting. Our podcast has aired 25 episodes so far since March 2023. We have hosted many great guest speakers that presented many topics, including scaling agile teams, test-driven development, software architecture, artificial intelligence, and many more. Last year, we were community partners with Startups Without Borders and Impact. We were also silver sponsor of the DevOps Days Cairo Conference 2023. Please visit our website to learn more about Tech Cafe and to contact us if you're interested in any of our services. So without further ado, I leave the mic to Paolo to talk to us about Scrum and hardware. So Paolo, the mic is all yours.
Thank you, Ahmed, and thank you for inviting me. So today we are gonna see very quickly something that for me has been like 5 years of work, and I hope that this journey will inspire all of you. So I've been already introduced. So basically, my job is divided between teaching Scrum and coaching companies. And yes, my publication, the one that now is getting very popular, is about artificial intelligence. That is the hot topic of the last 2 years. But it's not the topic I'm going to cover today. Today, we are going to talk about hardware. So what I mean by hardware is a tangible product, something that you can touch and see. And it might contain some software, since the software is everywhere today, but also contains some electronics so that the software can run, contains some mechanical parts, so basically atoms together to serve a specific purpose. There might be an engine, wheels, and move like a car, or even wings and fly like an airplane. All together, all these layers together, how can you ideate, design, build, and then mass produce something like that with Scrum? And so the book that just came out a few months ago is Scrum for Hardware Explained. And there I show all the details of the journey that I'm about to show you right now. So let's start with an historical point of view before entering into the details of Scrum applied to hardware. How we got here. So the gentleman here in the bathtub, his name is Frederick Taylor. Is he the inventor of the scientific management? Basically, everything about the Industrial Revolution came out thanks to him. So before Frederick Taylor, that basically invented the management consulting and the concept of management, before Taylor, we had something that is called the micro market. So before the first industrial revolution, basically the economy was based in micro enterprise working on micro markets. In this process, before, when we had the craftsman economy, basically there wasn't really a separation between thinkers and doers. So basically every company was founded by an entrepreneur, in some cases even an artist, if the goods to be produced, they required some kind of artistic skills. And then the company was basically an extension of the founder. With Taylorism, and then with the assembly line, thanks to Henry Ford, what we had is the separation of thinkers and doers. So we had basically the factory where everybody was working, and the management was the people in charge of thinking what was the best possible way to develop something. And then the workforce were just asked to follow the orders. What happens today, though, is that the complexity of the tasks cannot let the separation within thinkers and doers anymore. And so how can we organize the companies for the new challenges, what we call the creative economy, with a different paradigm that, of course, cannot be the one that was before the industrial revolutions? And so here you go. And so what we have right now is called the fourth industrial revolution. The World Economic Forum defined it as, is not the big fish which eats the small fish, it's the fast fish which eats the slow fish. Many companies are finding useful to the teamwork as a way to respond to the fourth industrial revolution. Why working in teams should be beneficial? First of all, because research shows that collaborative problem solving leads to better outcomes. And also, working in teams encourages personal growth, increased job satisfaction, and reduced stress. And also, people are more likely to take calculated risks that leads to innovation if they have the support of a team behind them. So let's see how to use a framework like Scrum to introduce the concept of teamwork in an industrial context. This company is called the 𝗔𝗲𝗍. They are based in Vicenza area, that is in the Veneto region of Italy. And they produce and sell machines of different kind of. Machines for jewelry, they are called micro machinery. Machine for laser machines for industrial application, like cutting, welding, and so on. And then 3D printers, the one in resin for dental and medical approach, and also the dust metal 3D printing for steel industrial applications. So they wanted to move to Scrum to be able to better answer to the challenges of a very large market and a very diverse set of products. So we started from the top. We trained the management, and after a training about Scrum and the Scrum scale, we had a workshop called the Lift-Off. That is one event to start a new team. And so we all aligned about what were the goals of this transformation. And in order to start the first team with hardware, you need something that comes from Lean, and it's called the value stream mapping. So basically, you got to map all the activities from concept to cash. So from the ideas to the finished goods and delivered. In Lean, we use this visualization to understand where is the bottleneck. With Scrum instead, we use this visualization to understand the different skill sets that are needed to build the final product, so that we can build a cross-functional team. Cross-functional team means that all the required skills are represented within the team. So we form a team with all the skills so that this team can elaborate ideas and produce products by themselves with minimal external dependencies. So we started from the value stream of laser machinery. And so I collected the 25 people from different departments of the company. And in one morning, 4 hours, we mapped the value stream of the laser machinery production. So we started from the left, that was gathering requirements from clients, up to the right, that was after sales maintenance. With these different post-its representing the steps, we created the professional profiles. So basically, first in blue, we mapped the skills for each step, and then we clustered these skills in professional profiles. What is different with traditional roles is that roles tells you what you are supposed to do, what you have to do in your job. A professional profiles instead give you the information what you can do. So you expect with this mapping to find senior people to possess multiple of these professional profiles. And with these professional profiles and the details of all the skills for each one, we created a self-assessment web form. It's just a simple Google form, nothing fancy. And we sent this form to all the workforce in the R&D department, including white collars and blue collars. So we wanted to have a team capable not only on designing a machine, but also to build it. For each professional profile, we asked people to assess themselves across the 3 levels of experience. Beginners means that I can work on this topic, but I need some kind of supervision. I need a mentor to ask things if I'm not sure. Senior means that I can work autonomously on this subject, so I don't need anybody supervising me. And master means that I'm so expert that I can teach to beginners how to be one day senior in this topic. So we collected all the data, and this is very useful data to understand also the more abundant skills and the most cards. And then for each person, we created a skill matrix. So with these cards, we printed these cards, and we used these cards to play a game of speculative organizational design. So we said, okay, let's pretend that we want to create we want to restructure the same department with the same people forming teams. How many teams can we build with these skills? And so basically with these cards, we were simulating team compositions, and then we could ask feedback to people and show the idea on, look, we want to create something like this number of teams, and we were thinking about putting these people in in these teams, what do you think? And every person has been able to provide feedback, and so we made some adjustment. We moved the natural pairs in the same team so that the people that have been working together for years kept working with the colleagues that they liked and appreciated for years. And then we produced the one on the bottom that is called the heat map. Basically, with the addition of all the skills of a virtual team, we could visualize what was the strengths and the weaknesses of these teams in terms of skill set, so that the people department could also mitigate some weaknesses, like hiring temporarily a consultant to make a team stronger in one particular skill, and maybe putting these consultants in charge of teaching others that topic. And with this first idea on what was the possible solution for the entire transformation, we started with just one team. So the idea is that think big and then start small. Don't start immediately with all the teams. And so we wanted to start with a first team, but the first bottleneck was the space. So we needed to redesign the space, because Scrum teams, especially in hardware, they are hungry for space. They need the space for boards, the space to have the sprint reviews, the space to have all the events, the sprint planning, the refinements, and so on. So we had to move the chairs here and there and people from one room to another to create the space to start the first team. And so we decided to start with the special laser machines. So the machines that normally have a high level of customization. And we run in the first problem. The first problem is that we had to have all the needed skills, we had 16 people. And so we were starting already with with a scaled environment, multiple teams working together on the same product. So how can you do that? We will see that with Scrum at Scale. So to detail the topic of multiple teams working on the same product, I have another example here. This company is called Net Engineering. They are one of the biggest engineering studio in Italy. They work with civil products, civic engineering products, such as bridges, streets, highway, tunnels, railroads, rail station, and so on. So a kind of increment, we will call it in Scrum, quite big and quite complex, with a very large set of skills. So when you have this kind of problems, how can you do that with Scrum? The Scrum guide is pretty short. There isn't enough information to manage complex products like that. We have this book. It came out in 2019. That is the collection of the Scrum patterns. So if you only know the Scrum guide is a set of patterns that can be considered between 20 and 30, depending on point of views. What is a pattern? A pattern is an elegant solution to a recurring problem in a particular context. In organization, if you want to design organization, you can use organizational pattern to design new organizations. So basically, Scrum, from the pattern point of view, it's a kind of recipe that contains some patterns that creates a certain behavior. So organizational pattern basically is something that you read, understand, it changes the communication pattern on that organization, so that it will also affect the culture of that organization and solves a problem or contributes to the quality of life in the context where you apply it. So let's see some Scrum patterns that are helping organizations that needs to do something more than just a simple Scrum guide. So let's get back to the previous problem I mentioned with 𝗔𝗲𝗏. We had a team and a product. Now, if you can have less than 9 people working on the team, 9 developers, that's fine. It works well. Well, actually, the Scrum guide says that it should be less than 10, considering product owner and Scrum master as well. So theoretically, it could be 8 or no more developers. If the product is not so big, that's fine. What happens if we have a bigger product? So in this case, we need to create a team of teams. So basically, this pattern here is creating a relationship within teams to work together on the same product. So what is a team of teams? If a team is a set of individuals working together and helping each other to achieve the common goal, that is the team goal, a team of teams is a set of teams working together and helping each other to achieve the common goal, that is the team of teams goal. This means that the teams have to figure out what to do to coordinate properly in order to deliver constantly a working product already integrated. And so what can we do? Well, we know from the Scrum guide that we have an activity called the refinement. The product backlog refinement is a continuous activity where the team clarify with the product owner and even some invited stakeholders sometimes what we are supposed to build. So the clarification is understanding what we need to do. If we have a team of team, we might want to have a scaled event called the Meta Scrum. So the Meta Scrum is an event where the product owners from all the teams and key stakeholders and a representative of development gather together to understand the high-level priority, even before clarifying what we have to do for the particular project in this case. So in some way, it's a kind of portfolio management. The difference is that it's performed with weekly, most of the time, events, not less than one time per week, per sprint or so. And so having a single enterprise backlog, it's what also Scrum at Scale is asking, so that at the organizational level, we have a clear understanding of what are the projects we are going to work. So we started this exercise at the beginning of our journey with this company, and that if you recognize the date and you understand the part of Italy where we were, meaning that we were close to Padua, what is gonna happen in few weeks? COVID. So we got the lockdown just at the beginning of our first team. And so we moved everything we were doing analogic on the online, and we kept working remote. And together with the Meta Scrum, this is aligning the product ownership, but of course it wouldn't be enough. So what we want to have other scaled events between the teams to make them to work together and helping each other. So we have the scaled daily Scrum. So same event as the single team. After the single team daily Scrums, we have the scaled daily Scrum so that a representative from each team gather together and say things like what impediments we had solved since yesterday, what new impediments we have, what kind of impediments we cannot solve ourselves. They also used to have, well, they are still doing it. They started having a scaled retrospective every sprint. So after every team retrospective, individual retrospective, they had the scaled retrospective. And what if we cannot solve the impediment ourselves, where we had a new role, the Scrum Master. This was a new person, not different from the team's Scrum Masters, in charge of systemic impediments. And so she was part of the executive action team, so the team of management in charge of solving impediments for the entire organization. And so basically the escalation was one step only, because Nicoletta, the person that was playing the role of the Scrum Master, was also member of the management team. So basically she was carrying on the impediments with the other management, the top management of the company on a daily basis. So the escalation in this case was very, very fast, because the company was composed at the end by 11 teams. And of course, especially if you work in some environment that are not stable, you can't expect, like in a Scrum Guide, to have only plannable work. You might encounter on unplannable work. For example, defects, they are not plannable. So how can you work in Scrum if you have also not plannable work? For this need, we have another pattern called the interruption pattern. Actually, in Agile education, we teach these patterns even at the entry-level Scrum Master class, because we consider this very important. So how this pattern works? Basically, at the sprint planning, what you do, you undercommit, so you leave some space called the buffer. We actually do this physically using an empty post-it called the buffer, and we place it in the sprint backlog. So it's an empty space. It's not that, well, okay, maybe if some interruption came, so we have space. So we actually visualize this space. So we give this buffer an estimation. And what happens during the sprint, that the team is working to develop the product backlog items that have been accommodated in a sprint backlog. And then if interruption comes, it goes through the product owner anyway, because the product owner is still prioritizing work, even if it's unplannable work. So with interruption, the product owner can decide, no, this is not an interruption for us. We send it back because somebody else has to work with this. Or can say, yes, this is for us, but it's not very urgent. So I'm going to do it later, meaning I'm going to put it on the product backlog and prioritize. Or maybe, no, okay, this is a legit interruption. We need to work on that now. So I will use the buffer. So the interruption goes on the buffer. The first available developer, all developers can work on that, make it done, and keep working on the rest of the stuff. What if we estimated the buffer on our sides and now we get more interruption? Well, we have another pattern from that. It's called the emergency procedure. So if you're interested, you can read that on the link. Of course, I wish you to never need the emergency procedure to develop your sprint goal. Now, if we have this mechanism applied to all the teams composing the team of teams, what happens is something very interesting. So let's pretend that we have these teams, they started working, and then we get one interruption, and this interruption gets to the first team. The product owner decides that this interruption is legit, so it was in a buffer. And then we got a new interaction, still for the same team. How can we do that now? Well, one option would be to call the emergency procedure, or you can ask for help. And somebody else from another team can say, well, we have space. Give us something easy that we can do for you so that you can manage this interruption. So we can have offloading and replanning in a way that everything is delivered anyway. So this pattern, the buffer, is enabling a team of teams of working together and helping each other even during the sprint. Now, when you have a very diverse set of skills within the team, let's pretend that each color of these is a different skill set. Let's say you are an orange person and you are expert in everything that is orange. Now, you might have a question about orange problems, but nobody else is orange in your team. So who can you ask questions about your particular skills, since in your teams you don't have anybody else understanding this topic so deeply? So in a team of teams, what we need to do is something that is in Scrum Scale is called the cross-team coordination. If you know the videos from Spotify, the Spotify Engineering Culture 1 and 2 from Eric Nieberg, you might remember the how I called 𝗘𝗅𝗿𝗄𝗃 in a different way. 𝗘𝗅𝗿𝗃, sorry, I don't remember. 𝗫𝗫, 𝗘𝗅𝗿𝗃 this way. And so they can ask to other peers. So what
chapter, if I may interrupt.
Chapter, so exactly. Yeah. The guilds is the other one, but we call it the community of practice. So the horizontal one is the chapter in Spotify, and this a regular line is the guild.
Yes.
And so they can ask their peers in the other teams, and normally there is a champion for each discipline, for each community of practice, that is in charge that the communication flow properly through this horizontal organization. So basically, for this company, what is a discipline? Well, it's a meeting every 3 months. It's a chat within all the orange people, and there is like a virtual space where they store documents and articles and so on. So this pattern, you can find it in theory, differently from the different case studies like Spotify or this one, in the pattern book, and this is called the 𝗔𝗶𝗁𝗃𝗀𝗃. And then, okay, you might also have to scale up more with vendors outside your company. So this company is called 𝗤𝗲𝗏. They work on house automation, so they create products like this one that are pretty simple, up to this one that are smart product, connected, and so on. They wanted to help to scale up the development to build a new house automation platform. And so the first thing we've done is a lift-off event that I already mentioned in SISMA. So it's a book from Diana Larsen and As Denise, and they explain on one-time only event that you do it to start a new team on a new product. And during the event, we discuss the purpose, so why we do this development. The alignment is the topic of what are the rules that we want to incorporate in this new team. And in Scrum, we have a lot of rules. So we have the definition of done, we have the definition of ready, we have the team working agreements. So all these agreements are defined in the lift-off event. In this case, we had 2 days of liftoff. And the 2 days ends up with a user story mapping. That is another very interesting techniques. And in this case, the user story mapping was covering both software, electronics, and mechanics. And since it was a house automation, we had 2 personas to develop the platform. So one persona was the Miss Maria, so was an old lady, one that not expert at all about technology. So she would just want to use the automated tools that the son decided to install for her mother to have a remote controlling, for example, and the smart assistants to the old lady. And then we had another persona called Bruno that was an electrician, so somebody, again, not really a software expert, that just want to install the house automation platform in Maria's house. So we created the user stories saying something like, Maria wants to turn the lights on because it's getting dark. Or Mr. Bruno wants to turn the light on to check if the installation was properly working. And so with this user story mapping, we created the first product backlog. Now, many parts of this house automation platform that was covering a lot of stuff, was covering light, heating, cooling, automatic windowing, the cameras on the for the alarm, and also on the ring bell, and basically anything you can think automated in your house. And so we had a lot of external vendors. So how to organize that? So we started already scaled. So we had 3 teams in the headquarters of the company, and one remotely team in another side, but still within the company. Then they became 2. This is a picture on a particular moment. Then we evolved, of course. Every case study is not a still picture, it's more like a movie, right? And then we had the suppliers. So how we manage the flow of the material from the supplier. So basically, to achieve industrial agility, vendors and consultants must play with a team attitude. So the first thing was to design a contract that was enabling collaboration and continuous delivery from vendors to the headquarters team. In this way, we didn't have to have different reviews, sprint reviews from each team. We only had one scaled sprint review where we were showing stakeholders the integrated platform, regardless which part was developed internally and which part was flowing from an external vendor. So when you have the right rules of the game, and to have the right rules of the game, maybe you want to check lean agile procurement, because there is a lot of interesting tools to design the right contract with your vendor, so that the rules are in some way agile before starting. Then you can have a scaled Scrum working like a team of teams we have seen before. So we had daily Scrum, a scaled Scrum with people of the different teams, but also people of the company maintaining the connection with the vendor. That was for the design. The scaled design was like having external teams. So we agreed with the vendors that you will have a single interface that is a person that will prioritize the deliverables we expect from you. And this is not a manager or project manager. It's going to be a senior technical person, so that your technical people can talk with this senior technical person, understanding the priorities, so that the business user stories in the scaled product backlog were reflected also in the vendor product backlogs. So we had to align the business prioritization with the technical prioritization across everything. And then we said to the vendors, as soon as you have something ready, send it to us. We will test it. So the idea was, instead of delivering big chunks of increments, please deliver early and often. And then we will provide feedback. Everything that is working within the month, we will pay it in advance. So the vendor was incentivized to deliver it early, because we freed up the payments for the vendors that were delivering soon and often. And so with this incentive, also the vendors had an interest in delivering quickly and as continuous as possible with the headquarter teams. How can you plan with such a scaled environment with so many people? We used a technique called the buffet planning, basically something that I made up. The idea was we tried to plan with the tool projected on the screen and everybody sitting and staring at stories and say, okay, who's going to work on this? Who's going to work on that? It didn't work. Everybody was bored. Everybody was sleeping. And so he said, okay, we need something more energetic. So we printed the user stories from the product backlog and we placed on the table. And then everybody came on this room, that we had this big room with all the teams from the quarter and represent product owners for the vendors and also the remote teams. And so we said, okay, so in the table you see the product backlog prioritized. We removed all the chairs from the room. So everybody was just standing. And so we said, pretend you're a buffet. You got to, since you are queuing up, you got to pull some food, because otherwise you have to queue again, and that wouldn't be convenient. On the other hand, you want to get only the food that you can actually eat, because you can't have a leftover. It's not polite. So, okay, you have 1 hour. Try to figure out with your teams and the other people in the room who should do what, which team should work on what. Go. So we started with the timer on the screen, and everybody was pulling this stripe of paper, reading it, and then we now noted that we had some kind of crowds around the story, not around the team, honestly. And so people started talking, and it was like a bazaar. So very, very, very chaotic, but very, very coordinated chaos. We call it this way. In 1 hour, we had every team with some stripe of paper for them. They were showing that. They were comparing with the velocity to understand if they had enough work for the entire sprint. And the chief product owner was checking on the table if there was some important leftover. In that rare case, he was asking to exchange something less priority with something higher priority, but this was really rare, honestly. And we started working. So this was the sprint planning 1, so deciding what to do. And then the team were splitting in different rooms to do the sprint planning 2. The second topic of the sprint planning is how to do that. And so they started discussing about implementation. And also, if they had a question for other teams, they were moving on the other rooms. And so there was still interaction between the different teams during the sprint planning. But in 4 hours, we managed to plan for something that the highest number of teams we had was like 5 plus 3 vendors. So that was quite impressive to have a scaled planning in 4 hours. And people loved it because it was quite energetic. And sprint review, as I mentioned already, we wanted to have only one sprint review where to see the integrated product. So we stole a room from the Q&A department. It was a lab, and this became the space where to integrate the product continuously during the sprint and held the sprint reviews at the end of every sprint. And then, of course, this is producing prototypes, single pieces. What about production? Let's see how to extend the teamwork also in production to mass produce something. This company is called Pietro Fiorentini. Is a company that is working in oil and gas. Is a company 80 years old, and they works in the entire world. So they have representative basically everywhere. So the product we are going to see now is not the one you see in the picture. This one is in Elon Musk terms, the machine. The product of the team I'm about to show you, they were building the machine that builds the machine. So the assembly line for this product. So this product you see in the picture is a gas pressure regulator for home usage. So it's something that you probably have in your house, because if you have a gas for heating, basically the gas move on the pipeline with high pressuring, and when they reach the destination, it needs to get a lower pressure. So this device is mixing air, normal pressure, with this high pressure gas, so that the gas get a lower pressure and can be used without exploding. So we started this team. Basically, again, it was a cross-functional team. So we had a representative from tooling department, maintenance, logistics, and this company is very serious about the lean. So they had already Kaizen promotion officer, and this guy played as a Scrum Master. Of course, in this case, we are in production, so the room was something on the factory floor. So in this space, the team could ideate, prototype, and build and test the assembly line. As I mentioned, they were already using aggressively all the lean practice, and they were using something called the Lean 3Ps. Lean 3P is an event-driven cross-functional team process based on try-storming. So the idea is that first you try prototyping, and then you see what works better, and then you design it on the CAD. It's actually the vice versa what normally people do. And they started prototyping with cardboard. So basically they designed the entire assembly line with these boxes, and with post-its, they define the flow and the number of cells in this assembly line. And then each cell is being prototyped in wood, where they can even have some working device on top of the wood, but most of the time it's fake devices. And in this way, they can collect feedback about the space that is taking this line, feedback about the ergonomy, so they can interview actually workers, saying, okay, do you think the line is big enough? Maybe it's too big, maybe it's too small, and they collect feedback. And also feedback about the material movement. So every step, they in this way visualize from where the parts comes from where the parts partially assembled comes from, where the output should go, and where is the discharge of defective material. And then they prototype every cell in aluminum. This already works in some way. So basically, you can build something with these aluminum cells, but of course, it's not performing like the needs. And then they start iterating the prototypes. So basically, the idea is to build an entire line, and then looking for the bottleneck, prototyping that, increasing that, and then moving to the next bottleneck, up to the throughput of the entire assembly line is reached. The desired throughput, I mean. Of course, they not only use cardboards and wood, but also they use 3D printing and anything technology can provide to have a quick feedback and quick experimentation. Now we have at least two teams in this case, one building the machine and the other one building the machine that builds the machine. So the one building the product and the other one building the assembly line. We don't want to have like a first one Scrum team developing all the product and then industrialization as a phase after the first team. We want to have parallel teams, and that's the more approach. So in industrialization, traditionally is considered a phase. From the Agile perspective, if you want to achieve industrial agility, industrialization is a product. Elon Musk is very vocal on this. You can find dozens of interviews where he's talking about this stuff, that the machine that builds the machine, it's even more complex than the machine itself. So how can you coordinate the two things in this way? You have a team building an assembly line for a product that is still under development. So we use this fishbone diagram. as a user story mapping for those familiar with Scrum, the Scrum technique I mentioned before. And so I said, okay, let's visualize in green the things that we know that we know. So things that coming from the other team is quite stable. And in red, things that we know that we don't know, things that the other teams declared unstable yet. So they are not sure about this part. So in this way, they use the mechanical design patterns to decouple the solution in the case there is some changes from the other team. So I have a picture for that. Let me go back. So see this part here? Hope people can see now my arrow. Yes, you can see my arrow. So this base here, this is modular, so that if the shape of the gas regulator changes, they only have to unskew this part here and rebuild only this small part. So they use the aggressive modularization and design patterns from mechanical engineer also to design for change. So, and also sprint reviews. So here, for example, the depiction on the right, so you see part of the line already prototyped. So it's not wood anymore. It was already quite working already. Of course, not yet with the desired throughput, but already working. So people at the sprint review could try it actually. We were in a factory floor, so the noise was very high. So we had to use microphones. So you see the people talking on a microphone because the noise of the neighboring assembly line was quite intense. But this sprint review was very fun, very interactive, very interesting. So takeaways. What we learned from this company. The modern challenges, the increased complexity of products require to change paradigm. And increasingly, industrial companies are using teamwork as a way to solve the challenges from the fourth industrial revolution. And Scrum is a very unique and practical tool to launch and operate a network of teams working with a minimum viable bureaucracy so that you have maximum productivity and shorter time to market, and also the ability to respond to change constantly and quickly. But this is the reality for many, many companies already today. What about the future? My friend Joe Justice, that is the main character of my first book, Scrum for Hardware, is recently saying that I think we should rephrase the Agile Manifesto with individuals and robot interactions over processes and tools. The future, or maybe some people is saying already the present, is an hybrid team composed of developers, part humans and part robotics, AI. So if you're interested in this topic, you can maybe check also my other book. So I think it's enough for now. I hope there are questions. Ahmed, are you there? Oh, I see you coming. Hello.
Yeah, hello, Paolo. That was a great presentation. I personally enjoyed it a lot. I did read the book, but I think there were some stuff in the presentation which really caught my attention. I may have missed them while I was reading the book, but definitely a very enlightening presentation, and I personally learned a lot from it. And yeah, I do have some questions for you, but I think we'll start first with questions from the audience. And I think at the end of the presentation, I'll be resharing this slide again so that people would be able to get in touch with you. So yeah, we can share that later. So let's start with the questions from the audience, because these were questions that were related to what you have presented in your slides. My questions are more from what I've read in the book. So we have this question. Why, Paolo, did you rely on management to design the team? why not create the team with the staff and management together?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So if you ask me as a Scrum trainer, and you say, what is the best way to form a team? The canonical answer is self-forming teams are proven to work better. The problem is cultural. So when an agile coach enter on an industrial terroristic company, most of the time, at the best you find them at the lean level. Otherwise, you'll find it in a terroristic approach, so more similar to 𝗘𝗍𝗄𝗏 approach. So management thinks and workers do. In this context, I have to decide which war I want to fight, which one I'm gonna leave it. Which battle I want to fight, which battle I'm gonna leave it, because I want to win the war. I don't want to win just the battle. And so the team forming is often something that management is quite jealous about it, maybe because it's fun. So the best I can get is you try to play speculative design, then you show to everybody else, you collect all the feedback, we do the adjustment, we show again, and we do at least a couple of iterations. And for example, in another company, I will not mention which one, I insisted, because I was younger, to make a team self-forming, and I found out it was quite embarrassing. People were quite embarrassed to self-form. And because they weren't used to. They were used to being told what to do, where to go, and so on. So if you ask me, in my company, I want to do teams to be self-formed. In other contexts, sometimes you have to play the game with the cards you get in your hand, and sometimes you you have to decide to live on something that is less optimal and just play with what people prefer to do.
Yeah, and as you've said, the ideal case is when the team kind of organizes itself. Okay, the team becomes a self-organizing team, but it's okay if somebody forms the team, and then as part of your continuous improvement, you learn how to do team skill heat maps and stuff like that, and then decide how you can further improve the team by perhaps inviting some people out and inviting other people in. So it's something that you can also do incrementally. Why not? Yeah.
Well, before starting, I insist on having a feedback from all the people involved. So it's not that the management, in every case study, it's not that management designed the team and we started. Management designed the team, we notified and show what we were thinking of, collecting feedback. We had often we have people saying, well, I've been working with that guy for 20 years. Now you put us in two different teams. Can we keep working together? And normally management is quite available in doing this kind of swap. And but let me insist that self-forming teams, self-selected teams, call it in the way you want, they work better. So it's proven. So it's just a matter that we need kind of maturity. Sometimes the culture is not ready to put people in a room and say, okay, self-select yourself in teams. Sometimes it's quite difficult.
Yeah, we did a session before on the Tech Cafe podcast where we hosted Paige Watson, and he discussed the fluid scaling technology. So this is where the teams are dynamic and they self-organize around work. So you don't have the concept of stable self-organizing teams. Actually, teams change every once in a while, depending on what people and want to work on which piece of work, basically. So I remember Paige saying that it requires a lot of seniority, a lot of maturity, and it definitely needs to be guided by some sort of coach. It's not easy.
Yes.
But yeah, this is something that teams can perhaps do when they are familiar with how agility applies to hardware and manufacturing, and then yeah, they can further improve the team itself.
In hardware, sometimes it's also mind-blowing for them, the concept that they can pull the work from themselves from the sprint backlog. It's something that sometimes takes few sprints and they require a lot of me insisting on this concept. Otherwise, the product owner assigning work to everybody. In software, these things, I mean, the rigid assignment of work in software is not true even in waterfall. Right, because there is more like it's more a pair, but in manufacturing, especially blue collar guys. So let's consider that these teams, two of them were blue collars, so normal workers. They weren't white collars employees, and so from day to night, saying, okay, self-organize yourself. It takes a little bit of time. We also need to respect the people that I've been working for this in the older way for maybe even 20 years. And so you cannot ask everything at once. So between all the battles that I think I need to win when I want to start, I prefer to break silos, have a very cross-functional team. So having really a representative of the value stream within the team, rather than other things that maybe we can defer and discuss it later on when you build the second, the third, or maybe the 10th team.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. I think that it's quite challenging to get white collar people to work with blue collar people. It's very challenging. I know a lot of people that work in factories, and this is always a big challenge. So you have to take it a step at a time. Actually, letting these people work in one self-organizing cross-functional team is quite challenging. So you have to pick your battles, as you've said. It's not an easy.
Problems. There might be problems of salary inequality, and so you tell them, well, you're a team, but then there might be somebody earning the double of the other, and that won't help. There might be culture, and then it's just the habit. So people, but you see these kind of things also in, for example, a lunch. When you go a lunch, normally blue collar stays together, white collar stays together. When you form the Scrum team with both of them and they start eating together, they kind of create a scandal and come, oh, look, these guys, the employees are eating next to these other guys. So in some companies you find this kind of stuff, depending on how similar to Fordism and Taylorism they were, or how close to lean they were. In lean companies, there is a little bit more empowerment of the blue collars. So there is the concept of the stopping the line, the undone, and so on. And so it's a little bit better, not simple at all, but a little bit better. But some companies, I found them in quite a traditional way. But shall we move on to the next question? Do we have another question? Oh, wow.
So, how did you work with management to accept the contemporary Agile roadmap of now, next, later, considering the amount of capital investment often required for industrial and hardware products? That's a good question.
But basically, all the cards that they had also fixed dates, you know. So the portfolio was the old one. We just visualize it in a way that anybody could see it. The idea of the columns, because otherwise, if you put everything in a single line, you reach the floor and then you need to dig because it was too. So the idea is, okay, let's move on the left side and let's divide the product backlog in 4 sides. The now, the next, later, yes, and I think it was 2 or 3 columns. I don't remember because depending on the amount of material of product backlog items I have, I do 2 or 3 or 4 columns. But anyway, so the idea is try to prioritize, and then of course when you have too many items, you want to have multiple columns. But it's not that was just later. If you read on the single post-it, there was also some dates, deadlines, of course. Also because that picture is the net engineering case study. So that is a single increment, might be millions, if not billions, because the high-speed train through Italy, they also work across. So we have seen many. I've seen them working on things also in Africa, like there was like a rail station, railroad with 2 rail stations in Central Africa. I don't remember the country. There was something in Turkey, in Istanbul, new train line in Turkey. So they work also abroad in many places. So it's millions and millions. So they had all the things that you expect to be.
Okay, thanks a lot for this answer. We can move to the next question. So, how did you explain to lean agile contracts to traditional vendors and suppliers? What did you do about lead times on their end and marketing timelines? Who was responsible for training these people? Yeah.
Well, actually, I didn't explain in agile contracts. In agile contracts, if you want to do the full framework, you have to. But if you want to talk about the contracts only, you have to learn the agile contracts so that you know what to do. But to them, the keyword is, shall we have a contract that for once is a win-win rather than we lose? What I mean, if you have the traditional contract, you have a vendor and a buyer, okay? So if you work on fixed scope, fixed time, fixed budget, it means that the vendor have to, in some way, understand beforehand how much it's going to cost, blah, blah, blah. In this kind of contract, if the vendor under-deliver and the buyer overpay, the vendor wins and the buyer loses. Instead, if the vendor over-deliver and the buyer underpay, the buyer wins and the vendor loses. So it's a win-lose game if you define everything. And now, if you want to have commodities, go with what you've been done so far with procurement. That's fine. Commodities, no problem. If we are talking about critical technologies, critical furniture that is going to even have a very long lifespan, you don't want to have a vendor. You want to have a partner. So in order to have a partner, we need a different set of rules. So once you learn to read the Mirko book about Lean Agile procurement, LAP Alliance, you will find everything. What you want to do is talk with your vendor and say, look, I'm going to build this strategic thing. I need a strategic partner. And this kind of wedding is going to last for many years, probably 10. Do we want to date? So pretend it's like your spouse or your husband. And the question is, okay, let's find the rules of the game that or we win together or we lose together. What means that we share risks and earnings. And so what kind of rules can we use is very contextual. That's why I showed that picture with the sliders. So because it's a conversation with the partner. But the conversation starts with, shall we do a partnership rather than just a contract of goods? Of course, you don't need the Lean Agile procurement every time. You need only for strategic things or complex things. But when you did it, this is the way we talked with those vendors. So they didn't know that we were talking about Scrum and Agile yet. We said, okay, we want to have a flexible contract, time material. We want to have ability to change our minds. We want you to deliver as soon as possible. If you deliver something that is not working, that's fine. We will provide you feedback and you fix it. So there are no fees for fixing stuff as soon as you deliver quickly. And then we agreed on what was the best way of working together. Because the topic was, dude, if we deliver fast, we're going to market with this new product, we're going to have a lot of fun and success. if we deliver later, our competition is gonna steal our best clients. So do you want to become our partner so that we sell a lot of this stuff? So you will keep working with us and we will share our success. What do you think about it? Some companies can do this kind of conversation, and this is very interesting. And other companies can't afford that. And so in that case, go with the traditional contract that you have. You will not have a full industrial agility, probably something that is a little bit less.
Yeah, this makes perfect sense. What I liked about your answer is you let the agile mindset drive the conversation with your suppliers. And if they accept this conversation, then we are one team working together to achieve the same goal. If they don't, then it's I'm working agile, the other is working waterfall. And yeah, you've talked about that previously. And so, yeah, this is how basically it's going to work. Yeah, or you another part or another.
I never phrase, sorry, very important. I never phrase it, this is Scrum, this is Agile, this is Scrum, I never phrase it. So what I always tell to my coaches is you don't talk about Scrum, you do Scrum. You use the word that other people understand. So no jargon with vendors, with the consultants, no jargon. Let's talk about we want to have a very collaborative relationship. We want to have a long-term relationship. We want to have a continuous delivery. We want to have a early delivery and quick feedback. We use the words that anybody can understand. So nobody can say, we work a different way. Because otherwise it became like a religion war. This is waterfall, this is Agile. No, let's do something that is good for business and for our relationship. That's how I approach the vendors.
A few years ago, I published a piece on LinkedIn. It was titled "The Never May Always Rule." So basically, yeah. So I've split practices into practices that management will never understand, may understand, and will always understand. So yeah, what you're saying right now is basically use the terminology which people will always understand, okay, rather than the ones that they will never understand or may understand. So people will understand win-win, ROI, cost benefit. These are things they are familiar with. But if you tell them, Scrum, daily stand-ups, retrospectives, they're like, what's this? So yeah, that makes sense.
If they are vendors, why they should care about what you do daily in front of the board? So they want to sell you something and get some value back. There might be money or something else. So it's also a waste of time teaching all the vendors about agility. They don't care. It's their own organization. Then, of course, if somebody recognizes this idea of continuous flow, they might ask, are you doing something like Lean or are you doing Agile? Because we found out a vendor that was already transitioning in this direction. So they was happy to have a dedicated team for my client to deliver continuously, because they were also looking into Scrum. But that was a coincidence. We didn't ask them to do anything, rather than just delivering early and soon.
That's great. So we'll take another question. When would applying Scrum be more suitable than applying lean manufacturing for hardware products? What would be the prerequisites to make applying Scrum for hardware products applicable?
With the last Scrum guide, the 2020 version, we have the stated that Scrum comes from lean thinking and empiricism. So basically, for the Scrum perspective, because Scrum and Extreme Programming and Crystal came before the Agile Manifesto, right? At the Agile Manifesto, they were talking about software mainly. But I work with Jeff Sutherland, and Jeff said, always remind us that the first Scrum teams, they were mixed the software and electronics. The first implementation of Scrum wasn't pure software. And what they said, that there is not lean or Scrum. There is lean thinking is included in Scrum thinking. Then about the practices, of course, in Lean, you might have something like the 5 whys that makes absolutely sense in every retrospective. Do some 5 whys to understand the root causes. There might be the 5S in Lean that maybe in some, but those are practices. So in Scrum, we intentionally not have practices. We have patterns just because we are open. So I think that Lean is, when I go into a company and they ask me about Scrum in hardware, I also teach principles from Lean. Again, I'm not there actually saying, this is only Lean, this is Scrum, and make all the difference. When we talk about continuous improvement, if I found somebody skeptical, I say, look, this is not even new because Toyota has been doing this since the 50s. Read the Taishi Ono book and you will learn this. And so Lean manufacturing is also saying the same stuff. So I mention Lean when I want to make some practice more authoritative, if I have some like feedback. If not, for me, Lean, for me and for Jeff, that I'm representing here, Lean is within Scrum, is embedded. So the Lean thinking, so we have the concept of waste and so on. So the idea is, what would be the prerequisite to make applying Scrum for hardware product applicable? Applicable is always, because Scrum is applying to people, not really the product. So if you need the Scrum, then makes applicable. If you don't need it, that makes possible. So if you have a need, what are normally the needs? Shorter time to market. So if you want to reduce dramatically time to market, you might want to use something like Scrum, teamwork, effective communication, visual management, and so on. And if you want to have the cheapest production line, maybe you want to go on like a linear approach, and that is the Lean manufacturing. This is quite good. But many Lean practices works and are absolutely natural within the Scrum framework.
Okay, I think we are done with the questions from the audience. I have a couple of questions, and I'll try to make them very quick. So we're seeing, Agile software was influenced by many practices from manufacturing, as you've said right now, from Lean manufacturing, the Toyota production system, just-in-time production, etc. Now we are seeing manufacturing being influenced by the Agile mindset and its practices in software development. So what factors led to that shift?
So my point of view here, the topic is organizational design. Okay, so if we zoom out for a second and we look at all this stuff from a more distant perspective, organizational design always had the need to find something better. So before the Industrial Revolution, the organizations were basically improvised. Okay, and knowledge wasn't properly taught, wasn't even properly collected, and so on. So Frederick Taylor came, and the Taylorism helped a lot to move the way of working a little bit more professional. Before it was more like improvised. The danger of that was that since the only pattern they had in mind was the master-slave pattern, slavery, and so the company without Frederick Taylor risked to become basically mass slavery. So Frederick Taylor professionalized the management. And this is what, for that time, that was a big jump ahead. Then Ford applied the Taylorism to the assembly line and the mass production. This was also big of the time. Then the Lean, that was understanding that things are not like cause effect. So the idea of Toyota, the revolution of Toyota was I want to look at the end to understand the the origin. So it's a kind of backwards thinking. So, for example, things that are not really intuitive, like going slow to go fast, run slow to go fast, or fix the problem. Never stop. 𝗧𝗧𝗏𝗃 would say, never stop the line. So if you look at these changes, you will see that basically the concept is one. It's organizational design, and it's going through different phases. The Scrum framework have been heavily influenced by Lean, because the name Scrum comes from a paper that is from Japan, from Takeuchi Nonaka, the new product development game. And Jeff Sutton got in touch with Nonaka after this paper, and before Scrum had a lot of influence from the Japanese culture, also the Zen culture, also from some kind of personal perspective. And so this influence allowed the Agile movement to come up with this different framework, the lightweight framework that later been named Agile in 2001. But extreme programming and Scrum, they had in mind the Toyota because that was quite famous already. It was the mid-90s. So basically, in what the advantage of agility was that the product was only electrons, was immaterial, and so with an immaterial product, you can be more brave. When you have to deal with atoms, it's a little bit harder than dealing with electrons. And so basically, the agility have some bold practices that in 2000 was impossible to think in hardware domain, but because we didn't have the technology at that time. So, for example, test-driven development absolutely makes sense in hardware. But today, because you have simulation, you have the quick prototypization, 3D printing, so you can do test-driven development with hardware today. Augmented reality, by 2000, this was not a thing. And so test-driven development emerged in software just because the technology was good enough to allow that. Now that we have more technology, we can be brave and have this quick feedback also with hardware. But I see like it's not like a different rivers, and then you say how the water from this river came to the other river. I see like a single river, and we are just we perceive them to be different movement because we look them quite closely. But if we have a very distant perception, also through time, I think this is a continuous flow and a continuous evolution. And so I'm also see something like Tesla, Hire, SpaceX, these new companies. They are doing something quite, in some way, even Bosch sometimes in some examples, they are doing something that is even more than what you expect from software agile companies. And is this a new thing? No, it's still an evolution, and it will be evolving over time more.
Okay, so this is the last question for today. What caught my attention in the book was Agile New Product Introduction. So can you talk to us a little bit about that and how it can enable Agile transformation in manufacturing?
Yes. So Agile New Product Introduction comes from my friend Joe Justice. He worked for a little while on Tesla. And when he left Tesla, he started in some way conceptualizing the things he learned in those companies. And that's the way he called it, the approach of improving an assembly line. So basically, I was mentioning it before, but I'm gonna cover it again. So assembly line, you make a prototype, okay? And when it's finished, it's never finished. It's finished when the throughput of the assembly line is what you desire. And so you start with a prototype, Then what you look, the lean approach is, let's look for the bottleneck. So the Agile MPI approach is that's actually how, according to gsarthi's Tesla is working. If you have a line that it needs to be a cell that needs to be improved, what they put is a router before this cell, and they divide the flow of like 90%, 99% on the traditional flow, and 1% is derived on a parallel flow. And then there is a team, a cross-functional team, that forms around that bottleneck and try to improve the bottleneck. They try building the part, and they have a sort of agreements that is like a definition of ready, a definition of done. So basically, it's the interface with the main line. And so they try to build the part in a different way to see if they can build it better. The crazy thing is that then they check the quality of the part and they put it on the flow anyway. So it's not like the traditional approach that you develop a new cell and then you swap it. Tesla do it is like a hot plug, because they do this with these routers. And that's pretty interesting, because they use like general purpose robots so that they can reprogram the robot very quickly, and not specialized machinery. And most of the time they don't use mass production machinery, more like prototyping machinery, so that it's easier and cheaper to change. And of course they pay these in the cost of the goods, but according what I learned from Joe, the price is worth the result. And so that's basically how to do it. This is a way of working directly on the assembly line while you're working. So it's instead of a cold swap, to do this kind of hot swap. and when the parallel new cell is better than the old one, basically they swap it. So 100% of the traffic flow through the new line, and then they remove the old one. So the new cell, and they go through the old one, remove the old one. So there is a picture in the book that maybe it's a little bit more clear than what I explained here. If you go on the scrum-hardware.com website too, there is a set of videos, and the last one is there is a video about of Joe Justice explaining this. So if people are interested in learning more from the truthful source that is Joe, and also in the book there is the link to that video. So in some way you can find the source. But the Scrum for Hardware, scrum-hardware.com is accessible on internet, so people, even without buying the book, can read it from there.
Thanks a lot, Paolo, for these informative answers and this great discussion. And thanks a lot for the very enlightening presentation. I've certainly enjoyed it a lot. And from the questions we've been receiving, I think that our audience has found it as insightful. I want to apologize for not being able to answer the rest of the questions, but if Paolo has the time, they're there on LinkedIn, so perhaps he can answer them later if he wishes. I'm sharing again the with Paolo's contacts, so feel free, of course, to reach out to him if you have any questions, or if you require any of his services. Lastly, we want to tell you what's coming up on the Tech Cafe podcast. So on April 22nd, we're hosting Paige Watson, who's going to talk to us about extreme programming. So we will be back to software development from this big world of manufacturing. So from extreme manufacturing to extreme programming. It's going to be a wonderful session. It's going to be on April 22nd. So be sure to attend that. You'll find it very, very informative and useful. Reach out to us on Tech Cafe if you need training or coaching in extreme programming or any of its practices. And you have here in the slides some of the practices that we provide training or consultation on. This includes TDD, BDD, user story writing, refactoring, agile software architecture, evolutionary design, etc. Visit our website to learn more about our services and follow us on LinkedIn to get our latest updates. Again, thank you very much, Paolo, and we hope to see you again in another session or presentation. Thanks a lot to all our followers, and we hope to see you again in a coming session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.